Hi everyone, happy Friday. So we are going to transition from talking about mitosis, which is basically the production of clone cells or of your body cells, your somatic cells, right? Making an identical copy of an original cell, right, for growth, repair, replacement, etc. Meiosis is another cellular division process, but this is what produces your eggs and your sperm. So this is really the precursor to sexual reproduction. Couple FYIs. So for note taking today, I did include this PowerPoint in the assignment post for today. So honestly, it's up to you what method of note taking you prefer. You can use the PowerPoint and take additional notes on the PowerPoint. You can print off the notes worksheets that I provided. Here's my cat Ricky. Say hello, Ricky. Let me get him out of the way. Sorry. So you can use the notes that I provided, or you can take your own notes. So honestly, whatever you prefer, whatever works best for you is totally fine with me. Also, I included Mr. Boylan's video of drawing out the phases of meiosis as well. There are a lot of similarities between mitosis and meiosis, but some very significant differences as well. So you're going to want to be clear on those. So I highly recommend that you follow his process of drawing out meiosis after this, but I did say it was optional, highly recommended. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about sex cells. When we talk about sex cells, we're talking about haploid cells. So basically, sex cells are either sperm or egg cells. So another term for these are gametes, which again is just an overarching term. So gametes, sex cells, same thing. They're referencing either sperm cells in males or egg cells in females, right? So these are going to be cells that have half the amount of genetic information as your normal somatic body cells, right? So the reason for that is because when we create a zygote, or it can eventually become a human, you combine a sperm and an egg. So hopefully you remember that in fertilization. So the sperm fertilizes the egg. The sperm carries half the genetic information. The egg has the other half of genetic information. When you combine, then you'll have a full amount of genetic information, right? But you need half that amount in each of the sperm and the egg in order to, when you get that combination, make a whole. So again, all of your body cells, your somatic cells, are what we call diploid cells or diploid cells, however you prefer to pronounce, because they have two sets of chromosomes. So in humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46 chromosomes total. So all of your diploid cells are going to have 46 chromosomes. Now, your gametes, or your sex cells, are going to have half that amount. So male sperm are going to have, in humans, 23 chromosomes, and female eggs will have 23 chromosomes as well. So one set. Um, and just to note, so human females, so we call eggs oocytes, or another term, and sperm, and the formal term is spermatocytes. So again, when you become you, this occurs through fertilization of an egg with a sperm. You inherit a single copy of genes from your dad and a single copy from mom, right? So you inherit one set of chromosomes from mom, one set of chromosomes from dad. Now, those genes aren't going to be, they're obviously, since you're inheriting one set from mom and one set from dad, you won't be identical to either one of your parents. And there are actually a couple other steps that occur in the process of meiosis that produces sperm and eggs that increase genetic diversity to ensure that you don't inherit even an exact copy of one set of genes that is active for your dad or active for your mom. So we'll talk more about that. So again, with meiosis, it's cellular division as well. But whereas in mitosis, we were making identical copies of our original parent cell, right? Your two daughter cells were identical copies, had the same number of chromosomes. They were all diploid cells. So again, we're going to use those terms more. With gametes, with the creation of eggs and sperm, we need to end up with eggs and sperm that have half the amount of genetic information as the original parent cell. So your original parent cell in the creation of eggs and sperm are going to start, that's a diploid cell that we start with, and it's a special cell called a germ cell, right? So that diploid cell that we actually need to divide in order to end up with half the amount of genetic information in our resulting eggs or sperm. So let's talk about chromosome sets here. So we talked about this a little bit the other day, but when we take a look at chromosomes, so this is what we call a karyotype that you would see in a human, because we can tell because we actually have 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes total. So that's what makes this, a human karyotype. And here you can tell that this is a male because we have one X chromosome and one Y chromosome. So these are your sex chromosomes, and these other 22 pairs are what we call autosomes. Okay. Now you can see that we actually have these chromosomes in pairs. So we call these that one pair of chromosomes would be referred to as homologous chromosomes. So what that means is that basically, let's say the left chromosome for each of these sets, so chromosome number 1 on the left, chromosome number 2 on the left, chromosome number 3 on the left, number 4, etc. Let's say the ones on the left you inherited from dad, and the ones on the right you inherited from mom. You can see that since we say you have 23 pairs, each pair is very similar. So they're similar in size. They're similar in basically the bands here, which we call loci, which are where your genes are located. So homologous chromosomes carry the same genes in terms of the type of genetic information, right? But you have different forms of genes that can be carried in those locations. So, again, maybe on your chromosome for dad, right? This gene here codes for brown hair, and your on the chromosome you inherit from mom, the gene for hair is going to be in the same location on the same chromosome number 1, but this might code for blonde hair instead, right? But again, you're going to find that gene in the same location. So they're approximately the same size and length, every homologous pair, and they have the same centromere position as well. So same centromere position. So basically when scientists are actually evaluating any sort of karyotype, like for example, when they tested my baby for some genetic testing, they would actually take a cell from a baby and take a look at it during the middle of this would actually probably most likely be metaphase that they caught these chromosomes in, because chromosomes have to be condensed. So they would take a cell, find a cell that's in the middle of metaphase, and they would actually basically snip up all these chromosomes and match them together to find their homologous pair, and then they would count them to make sure that they have the correct number. They can tell the sex from that then, and again, of course, they can also see if there are any overarching genetic abnormalities that would be caused by having the wrong number of chromosomes, which we'll talk about more. But trisomy 21, which is what causes Down syndrome, means you have an extra 21st chromosome. So if they had done this test on my baby and she had had an extra 21st chromosome here, they would have told me that she had Down syndrome. So that's how they can tell. Okay. So the term ploidy. So again, we talk about haploid and diploid cells a lot. Just the term ploidy in general means how many sets of chromosomes an organism has. So if you're haploid, or N as we refer to, it means you have one set of chromosomes, right? If you're looking at a diploid cell, then that's going to have 2 sets. So again, all of your cells in your body, right, are going to be diploid cells. Your somatic cells, your body cells, are all diploid cells, meaning they have 2 sets or 23 pairs of chromosomes. So in your diploid cells, N would be 23, but you have 2 sets, so the total number of chromosomes in each one of your body cells are going to be 46, okay? Our only haploid cells that we have are our sex cells. So in my case, right, my haploid cells are my egg cells. In males' cases, their haploid cells are their sperm cells, right? Now, triploidy and tetraploidy are other conditions that humans actually cannot survive. If you're a full triploid, meaning you have triplets of every chromosome, there are no known cases of survival, and the same with tetraploidy. But again, we do have some instances of humans surviving when maybe only one chromosome has a triplet. But again, we are supposed to be diploid, right? That's our set. The interesting thing is, and we'll talk about this more as well, is that some plants actually thrive being polyploidy, having more than 2 sets of chromosomes. So we actually intentionally breed strawberries and bananas to have extra sets of chromosomes because they thrive. They're juicier, they're more flavorful, whereas we would not survive. So just an interesting little fun fact for you there. Okay, so again, with your homologous chromosomes. Remember, homologous chromosomes are your pairs, right? So if you inherit 23 pairs of chromosomes, you inherited one set from mom and one set from dad. Chromosome number 1 that you get from mom is going to be homologous to chromosome number 1 that you get from dad, right? Same genes carried on both of the chromosome number 1s, found in the same locations, centromeres in the same position, right? When you have a cell that contains both sets, again, we call that a diploid cell. So di means 2, which is why we represent diploid chromosomes as 2n, right? Because again, your number of chromosomes an organism has, you represent just by n. So in humans, we would say our number of chromosomes, or n, would be 23. But again, the majority of your cells are somatic body cells. They have 2 sets of those 23. So the majority of your cells are diploid, would be 2n, meaning you have 46 chromosomes total. So let's look at this picture here. If you're trying to identify the n and so basically the haploid number and the diploid number, so n and 2n, what would you say? So hopefully you got that the n in this picture would be 3, right? So you have 1, 2, 3. So the number of chromosomes an organism has would be 3, right? The diploid number means you have actually 2 sets of those. So again, let's say this is chromosome number 1, this is chromosome number 2, this is chromosome number 3, right? So basically chromosome number 1 differs from number 2 in size and shape and the genes that it carries, and also differs from number 3 in size and shape and genes that it carries, or genetic information that it carries, right? But you actually have 2 sets of each, okay? So these 2 would be homologous, these 2 would be homologous, and these 2 would be homologous, okay? So our n would be 3 here, and our 2n would be 6. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So again, gametes, or your sex cells, so gametes are just another term that we use for sex cells, or egg cells, or sperm cells. Those are all interchangeable. These are not diploid, they're haploid. So think of haploid as meaning half. So they contain half the amount of genetic information, half the amount of genes. They have 1 set of genes, okay? And again, we represent that by the letter N. So you could use interchangeably N, haploid, sex cells, gametes, sperm cells, egg cells, right? We have 6 different terms we could use. They're all interchangeable for these egg or sperm cells, okay? So again, you can see here, diploid, you have 2 sets. Haploid, you have 1. Haploid, think half. So how do we produce haploid cells? Well, that occurs through meiosis. So again, meiosis is how we actually produce eggs and sperm. Mitosis is not how we produce eggs and sperm. Mitosis is how your body cells you reproduce and for growth, repair, and etc. So basically, once an egg was fertilized, right, and you became a zygote, that zygote grew into a baby through mitosis. But how did we actually create the egg and the sperm? That is through meiosis, okay? So in meiosis, we actually need to reduce the amount of chromosomes that we have by half, because again, we don't want to have a sperm cell that has 46 chromosomes and an egg cell that has 46 chromosomes, because if we combine those, then the zygote would have 92 chromosomes, which would be double the number of chromosomes that you're supposed to have. Okay, so we need to actually divide this number in half for our eggs and our sperm, with the idea that eventually we're going to combine that egg and that sperm to make a whole diploid zygote cell. Okay, so the way we do that is we actually do 2 rounds of PMAT. We do 2 rounds of cellular division. Okay, but we only do 1 round of DNA replication. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right. So again, there are going to be similarities that you see here, but you have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, 2 distinct rounds of division. In our end product here, instead of 2 daughter cells that we produced in mitosis that were identical to the parent, in meiosis, we're going to produce 4 non-identical haploid daughter cells. So again, in mitosis, you had 2 identical diploid cells that were identical to the parent. In meiosis, we're producing 4 non-identical haploid daughter cells. So 4 non-identical daughter cells that have half the amount of genetic information as the parent cell.